And I'm going to suggest that we call the meeting to order. Thank you all for, actually, thank you for being a quorum. As you probably know, tonight's meeting is about our responsibility per the charter to have a public forum. Now, last year we had one member of the public attend, and it may be that way again or none, in which case it's going to be an even shorter meeting than I already anticipated. I gotta say, Woody, by the way you're framed in that picture, you look like one of those poets from like the beat 50s, you know, like you should be doing a poem. But anyway, I'm anticipating a relatively short meeting. I hope everybody got the material that I sent out yesterday. There's a couple of things that are just FYI kinds of things. As you'll recall from our last meeting, there were 3 or 4 departments that had not fleshed out their capital improvement plans beyond year 1. Chief Pauly was good enough to send his 5-year plan, as was Nancy Chavetta for the Shellfish Department. And I got the Wellfleet Elementary School. We got an answer from the Rec Department, which was that what they had in there was it. And it seems to me there was one other. Also, we got the sheets for the 2 requests from the Marina, which we had already said yes to anyway, but they're there for your information and delight, you know, bedtime reading, whatever. The plan tonight, after we go through, do the minutes, is basically, I did put together a prototype of the report that we're going to submit to the TA, and thank you, Maria, for being on tonight, and Mike Travato. We have to submit a report by the end of the month. I patterned it after last year's, and I basically updated it to include the votes we've already taken this year. So I'm just going to go through the recommendations we already made department by department, just to review them quickly for the sake of any public members who are online. Where we have business to do, that is votes yet to take or recommendations to make or not make, they are marked in the report, so we can address those as we get to them. And then I'm going to open up the meeting to anybody from the public who has general comments. And if someone from the public has a question about a specific department, as we go through it, I will certainly be willing to entertain those questions. And that's it. And hopefully this will not take a long time. I don't anticipate that it will, since we pretty much whipped through 85% of the capital improvement plan at our last meeting. The open items are pretty scant. So hopefully that's acceptable, clear, and you understand what we're doing. And if you can open up that report, it'll be easier for you, but you don't need to. We can address it as we get to it. For starters, has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from the October 28th meeting?
Yes.
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 So I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes unless somebody has a particular issue with them.
I have an
moved.
issue. I have an issue.
Yes.
The shellfish items where it said 8-0 should be 8-0-1 because I cannot vote.
Good point.
Very good point. And also I noticed that Miriam Spencer is Spence. So we need to do
I'll fix that right now. Sorry, Bob.
No problem.
Thanks, Bob. That's very useful, obviously. Does anyone have any other comments or concerns about the minutes as they stand?
They're all fixed. Sorry, Miriam.
I move the minutes as fixed.
Second?
Okay, let's roll through. I'm looking at you as Woody. You're the. Well, I'll say aye on my behalf.
Aye. Aye.
Linda, you're muted, but it looked like an aye. Stephen,
Yep.
Bob,
Aye.
yeah. I think I jumped over
You
Jen.
got- Yep,
Aye.
All right, so I'm losing count here, but Rebecca, hopefully you've got an accurate count there, and I believe the minutes were
I'm all
accepted.
set. I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. So per what I was just saying, I'm going to start by just running through very briefly what the report structure is. I'm not going to read it because it'll be out in a few weeks. But as we did last year, there's an introductory section that just says why we're doing the report in the first place, which is largely that we have to per the charter and have it submitted by the end of November. I added a small section after that on the impact of COVID on financial planning and how that may in fact or have already affected some of the capital. Nice. What's the dog's name?
Bodie, and he sat through the entire Board of Health meeting this afternoon watching you guys talk. So I think he likes the people on the screen.
That's good. The COVID is sort of a pro forma thing, just saying it's created a lot of stress and made it an abnormal year in terms of planning, particularly in terms of the delay from April to September for the annual town meeting and how that's affected things like getting the capital plans together and so on. Then the overview section is just a basic description of what capital requests look like. And then the total for this year as currently listed in the capital plan we got last time was about $5,496,000 or $97,000 for the 5 years and $1,845,400 for this year alone. But there were certain capital items that were not in the estimate that we received in October, and we don't yet have the Nauset Regional School District. So those numbers are just placeholders for what the real numbers are going to be eventually. So take them as such. It's more like you get a sense of the proportion, not the precision. And then going into our recommendations. So the first department that we looked at the last meeting was the MIS department. Every year, the MIS department puts in $50,000. It's a sort of informal number because it never changes. At least it hasn't changed in the few years that I've seen it. So we approved it on the basis that it is a not to exceed kind of number. And the assumption is that you would potentially spend up to that number. The one big change this year, and I think Maria Broadbent made this point at the last meeting, was that in part because of COVID as it stands right now, and as it may continue to be an influence on spending for technology and whatnot, that as people work remotely and as we build out an infrastructure to enable that kind of work, the kinds of things that get spent on for MIS are likely to change. Having said that, we did approve it or recommend it at our last meeting. Any questions, thoughts, concerns from members of the committee or the public?
I thought it was an excellent report, Fred. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'll blast through it to hopefully validate your praise there. The clerk, which again, we recommended at the last meeting. The two requests were for microfilming of permanent records. There was a discussion about, is microfilm still a real thing? But we assume that it is. And also for storage vault shelving, the big difference between last year and this year is that last year, the estimate for the shelving was $15,000. And we reserved our opinion last year because we thought that sounded like an awful lot. This year has been broken out into FY 22, 23, and 24 as $5,000 a year. And the finance committee had no particular issue with the clerk, the request from the clerk, town clerk. So again, if anyone has any thoughts, concerns, issues, or questions, this would be a wonderful time to express them. Though there will be time at the end you're still formulating your question. Okay, we go on to the shellfish. You may recall that at the October meeting, there was only one amount listed for the pickup trucks. And the question, we posed the question to Nancy Chavetta, since last year's had shown a cycling of 3 trucks in and out over the course of 5 years. And Nancy was good enough to come back. In fact, I noted there that in last year's, there was a 5-year cost of $120,000 to rotate 3 trucks. This year's request has been reduced to $79,500 spread out. In FY22 is $24,000, $26,500 in 23, and $29,000 in FY 2025. But essentially, it's the same type of request, that there will be 3 trucks that will be cycled through in much the same way that the fire department cycles their vehicles, the police department cycles their vehicles. And I don't recall that the finance committee had an issue with the notion of getting that 3rd truck per Nancy's justification for it. So we do need to take a vote because it's now a complete line item. So if anyone has any concerns or questions for Nancy, I see she's on. Have at it. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to take a vote on that line item.
So moved.
Wait a second. No second?
Second.
I heard a second, I think.
I removed, Stephen seconded.
No, I didn't second.
I second.
Jeff
Jeff
seconded.
seconded.
Jeff seconded.
Okay, well, we have a second. So I vote aye. Ira?
Aye.
Jen? Stephen?
No.
No. Bob has to recuse himself on this. Linda? Is that an aye? Jeff?
Aye.
Can I just ask a
Nancy has
question?
her hand raised.
I'm sorry.
I just want to clarify one thing in case this is something that Joe had a question about. We already have 3 trucks. We don't need a new one, we don't need a 4th truck. We have 3 trucks. And with the DPW, they asked us to cycle through every 5 years. So by cycling through every 5 years, we maintain the trade-in value of the old truck. And we are able also to decrease the amount of spending on repairs. And so you end up just paying what you're paying for the truck because almost everything is under warranty or up to date. The DPW has been able to fix it. And we haven't had to have major repairs. I did some math and it looked like the cost of doing this is about $5,000 a truck a year, which I think is a better use of town funds than an unknown question mark of having trucks hang on, and then all of a sudden you're spending thousands of dollars to fix them. And the other thing is that we are safety vehicles and we have to often tow people off the beach, and we cannot afford to have a truck that's not in good working order. So
I guess I didn't understand that you had already acquired the 3rd truck. So the 24,000, the 26,000 is primarily for repairs and maintenance?
no, we're replacing. So every 5 years, we will replace 1 truck. Each truck, so we have a 2016, which should have been replaced this year, but we opted out because of COVID. We have a 2018, which will need to be replaced next year, 5 years later, 2023 fiscal year. And then we have a 2020, which will get traded in 5 years after that.
I see. Okay, I guess I didn't understand that you could get a truck for $24,000.
Because we have trade-ins and we have fleet incentives for municipalities.
Okay, now I understand. Did that help clarify anything for anyone at this point? So does anyone want to change their vote based on that?
No. If that was for my benefit, Nancy, thank you, but I'm still a
You're
no.
welcome. Okay.
All right, I believe we got through everyone. Linda, did you vote? Let's do the vote again, just to be sure. I'm pretty sure we got through everyone.
I have 5-1-1 is what I got. 5 yay, 1 nay, 1 abstained.
Ira, you were an aye, correct?
Yes, yes.
Jen?
Aye.
3-1. Linda? 4-1. Jeff?
Aye.
So that's it, 5-1-1, correct? Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay. So we recommend 5-1-1. I believe what we've done in the past with the question of the floating up weller, and particularly because it's been pushed off to FY 2023, was to essentially reserve our opinion on it based on the ongoing situation in the harbor. And I don't believe there's any requirement for us to take a vote on that at this time, because it is not an item for this year's capital plan. And we can look at it next year, because as I recall, Nancy, please correct me if I'm wrong, part of the reason for pushing it off in the first place was to wait for the dredging and to see the effectiveness of the dredging on the flow of water in the inner harbor. And since we haven't even done the inner harbor yet,
Right.
it would be moot at this point. Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct. We would be putting in for it, you know, if everything goes well and we feel good about stuff, we would be putting in for it next year, so that, because we'll have the dredging, or in FY 2023, I think I put
Yes.
it in for, because the dredging, the third phase of dredging will finish that fall, and then we would do it in the spring with, that's when you buy your seed. But it's in there so that we can plan for it. We've already had the analysis and evaluation done of the effectiveness of using a floating up weller in the post dredging harbor. One is, that's what we're waiting to see, but it's nothing that we have immediate plans for. So, but just in terms of you getting a big picture view of things that might be coming down the pike, that's why it's in there.
Understood. And I think a point to be made here for those who haven't been involved in the process before is that sometimes the FinCom will reserve its opinion, not because we think it's a good or a bad idea to do it, but because the timing is a question. And there are some other things in this capital plan where we've suggested they be deferred for a year, for example. And in this case, I think part of the question would be, you're coming to us presumably next year and saying, I'm ready, conditions are right, and I want to do this in FY23. And then we would have all of the information we need to say yes or no, we recommend or we don't recommend. But at this point, it would be premature for us, and especially since we're not, except for Bob, not experts in your field of work. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
On to the police department. There was nothing in the police capital plan that we objected to or were disinclined to recommend, and we recommended that the police capital plan be approved. Questions, comments, concerns before we move on? Yes, Jeff?
I just wanted to raise, I brought this up with the Energy and Climate Action Committee. I mentioned some of the chief's concerns, find out whether or not there are any towns in the Commonwealth that are using Teslas or electric vehicles. They believe there are some in Connecticut, and Dick Elkin, who's the chair of that committee, said he was going to investigate and see if they find any additional information.
Okay, good. And just to review from the last meeting, we come to the conclusion that it wasn't our province to recommend or not recommend based on whether electric vehicles would be used, but that we suggested that it would be a good idea to look into it. And Chief Hurley, as I recall, was fairly consistent about the need to move forward with replacing vehicles, and that he would do what he could to look into electric alternatives, but either way, vehicles have to be replaced.
And there was something passed at last, one of the items last town meeting that was passed was something dealing with the language of the town committing to the net zero emissions or whatever. I don't remember which particular item it was, but I know the town voted on that, so.
Yeah, and it's far enough out that the town theoretically has time to actually make it real without it being this year, for example. Thanks. If no one has any other questions or concerns about the police capital plan, I would move on. We good? Thank you. The fire department. We recommended the fire department's capital plan. The largest items are 2 ambulances and an engine. You'll see in the spreadsheet that I sent, Chief Pauly sent his expanded capital improvement plan in 2025. There will be a replacement for ambulance 99, ambulance 97, 98 in 2022 and 23, engine 95 for $625,000 in FY23. This is pretty standard stuff if you've seen fire department capital plans before. It is cycling equipment in and out. It is large, expensive stuff. And some of these may and are likely to show up as individual articles in the warrant because of their size. But that is not our issue at this point. Our issue is whether we believe that these are reasonable requests given the timing for them. In FY 2022, by far the largest item is ambulance 97, I guess. And we had already said, yes, we approved or recommended that purchase. So there's nothing to be done here by us unless someone has a particular issue with the capital requests from FY 23 through 26. As you look at the spreadsheet, if you see something that you want to ask Chief Pauly about, he's online, and I think this would be a good time to ask those questions. Also, if there's a member of the public online who is interested in getting more information about the fire department's plans for capital acquisitions, this would be a good time to raise those questions. Hearing none, then I'm going to just reiterate that we went ahead and recommended, to some degree, we recommended the fire department's capital plan on faith because we know Chief Pauly, thank you, does a wonderful job of managing that department. And we assumed, I believe, that even when it was fleshed out, it would still look rational. From my perspective, it does, but to each his own. But thank you very much, Chief Pauly.
Fred, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course, Stephen.
Do we have any members of the public on this meeting?
I see Bill Sullivan, Dan Sullivan.
Will Sullivan's part of the marina.
Right, so unless
Okay, so
he's
just,
joined as a member of the public, the answer appears to be no.
all right, so you're rehashing everything we've already decided on for the benefit of the
For
public?
the benefit of the public record,
Okay,
this is being recorded, and if somebody wants to become knowledgeable about what we talked about later on, that's the purpose in doing it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
it's the fire chief.
Hi.
So just really quickly, the 3 big expenditures for the fire department in terms of apparatus will be to replace 2 ambulances and engine 95 in next year's capital improvement plan. We've had discussions about the previous discussions about the ambulance fund and where that sits right now. I'm very confident, quite confident, I should say, that we will be able to recoup the ambulance fund to be able to purchase both those ambulances out of that fund balance as long as it's left alone in the next 36 months. So those will be paid for in cash, if you will, out of the ambulance fund receipts. And the biggest expense then will be to replace engine 9.5, which at that point will be about 23 or 24 years old. And we will need an override to do that. But again, if for the benefit of the public and for the FinCom and others, this is the last major expenditure of apparatus that we should have to do for probably the next 10 years. We've taken the last 8 years and been able to rebuild the fleet and replace the fleet. So this is the last one. If that gives us any more information or consolation, I appreciate the FinCom, the select board, the voters' support in all of this. We've gotten a lot done in the 8 years here that I've been fire chief. So this will be the last major replacement, will be that engine. My sense is for at least 10 years. And I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Actually, since we're doing a quick review here, I did have a question about what catwalk storage was as the $300,000 item.
Well, we've hung on to that when the fire station was occupied in 2009. There was a sense to finish off a storage area. I'm not sure that needs to be done. I'd have to get with Mark Vincent, who really is the person to budget for a lot of this in terms of our facilities. We do have some very long-term lingering HVAC issues in the building since day one. That's a topic for another day. But so that whole catwalk storage thing, we keep on there as a placeholder. So we kind of, just vet out where we are with the building and what we need for storage. But that's really not a primary concern of mine at this point. It's just there as a placeholder.
Thank you. Anyone have questions? Anyone at all? Okay. Thank you. The recreation department, there was a question. There were only two items in it. It was creating adult fitness stations and resurfacing of the basketball courts. They were both targeted for FY 2022. Those are the only items that the department head is requesting in the capital improvement plan. There is nothing for the ensuing years at this time. And it was our recommendation at the last meeting that those purchases be deferred to FY 2023. So unless someone has some notion that we should change our opinion on that, I would leave that in place. Okay. On the beach, I got a message from Suzanne today. There was a question about the repeaters, and I believe Jeff Cash had a question at our last meeting about whether this was the final, whether first of all they were necessary, and secondly whether this was the final piece of that system. Our understanding was that the repeaters were linked in some way, basically, to the system that the police and the fire department have requested. In Suzanne's message of yesterday, it says the request in FY22 was intended to improve beach communications between lifeguards and emergency, e.g. police, fire, rescue services, by upgrading the lifeguard radios to the 800 band and upgrading repeaters. The message I got today is that Suzanne is inclined to defer that request to FY23 or 24. So I believe we can reserve our recommendation based on the likelihood that this will not be in the FY22 warrant per that message. And so we reserved our recommendation at the last meeting. The only thing that's changed is that we have a little clarification of what it was about, and that it looks like the request actually will not be in the FY22 warrant or as an article in that warrant. Anyone have any questions about that? I believe that was the only outstanding issue we had with the beach capital plan. Okay. The marina. There were two items in the marina's request. One was for a new boat, 25-foot center console emergency response vehicle, and the other was for an all-terrain forklift. It's to replace an old, very old truck. I see William Sullivan. Are you raising your hand? I can't tell because all I see is your name. Mr. Sullivan,
Yes, I'm here.
is there something you'd like
I'm
to
here via the phone.
So we had recommended those. We didn't have an issue with them. We discussed them at some length. The only thing missing was we did not have the capital sheets that went with them describing what exactly was involved. Those were provided by Mike Travato since our last meeting and have been sent around. This is the new upgraded vehicle that will replace, I assume there's a next slide that will show the vehicle it's replacing. The older truck. And there was a pretty spiffy picture of a boat as well. Yep, that's the older one. One question is, do we retire that truck or do we keep it for emergencies?
I would say we retire that and put it in the museum.
Okay, it's that bad, huh?
Yes. And this is what the new boat should look like.
We'll be stealing it from the Charleston police, evidently.
Yeah, Plymouth has the same one, but theirs wasn't online yet. So this was the picture that Safe Boat sent to me.
All right, thank you. So as I said, we didn't have an issue with it at the last meeting. It was just pending getting a little more information about them so that the capital plan would be complete. So there's nothing actually to undo or to further do. If anyone has any questions, Mr. Sullivan, this would be a wonderful time to ask them. Well, thank you then. Thank you. And thank you for the pictures. Pictures are always good.
Yeah, thank you all very much. It's nice to work with all of you.
You too.
Thank you, Will.
DPW. As you may recall, the DPW capital request is always lengthy compared to the other departments, and it was broken out into 4 sections. So in the report, I'm addressing each section separately because we voted on them in a sense separately. There is a section on equipment. This is for replacement and upgrade costs of existing equipment. We voted to recommend those requests. Similarly, at the transfer station, many of the elements of their request was for vehicles like a roll-off truck, a front-end loader, and we recommended those. And then I think through me, Mark Vincent explained that the roll-off truck was intended to actually bypass our having to use an outsourced service to take trash away, and that we would save money in the long run, even though the upfront cost was what it is. I'm going to jump forward to the capital improvement, which was 2 revetments at Keller's Corner and Duck Creek, which we voted to recommend. The one area we reserved our recommendation on was facilities, as we did last year. These include things like upgrading systems, HVAC systems, painting, and also the awning and areas that we had questions about last year, some of which had to do with the guard gate at the transfer station and so on. What we did last year and what I believe our sense was this year is that we reserved our recommendation to our annual meeting with the department head of the DPW, Mark Vincent, and that will happen sometime in the next 3 months. So unless someone has an issue with how we're addressing that, I would suggest that we just hold off on discussing the facilities portion until we've had a chance to meet with Mark and get more details and more information as we did last year. Anyone? Bjorn? Anyone? Okay.
Sounds good.
Education. There are 2 components, basically, the Nauset Region or the Nauset Region School District and the Wellfleet Elementary School. At present, going backwards on this one, the NRSD, the Northern Region School District, has not yet finalized its capital improvement plan, probably will not for a few weeks yet. So there's nothing for us to vote on that front. And we will have to reserve our opinion, let alone recommendation on that one for a bit. Last year, you may recall that most of the Northern Region's capital items were for the middle school on the theory that the high school renovation would be underway by now. Clearly, that has not happened. I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's true, that the school board and the superintendent and the interested parties are reworking their thinking on the high school renovation based on COVID and what's happened with remote learning and whatnot. That doesn't mean that they're going to withdraw it or that it's going to change in any particular way, but I think it's a conversation that's happening. And so that will also impact what recommendations are made for the middle school and so on. So for now, there's nothing for us to do on that front. Those of you who got the spreadsheet that I sent out on new items will notice that the Wellfleet Elementary School, however, they sent their 10-year capital plan, of which the first 5 years are most interesting to us. And the most interesting element of that for FY22 is $1.2 million earmarked for a fire suppressor or sprinkler system. You may recall that last year, the capital plan for the elementary school showed roughly $250,000 to $350,000 a year in the first 5 years. And the question arose at that time of where was the sprinkler system, which we knew was going to be in the neighborhood of $1 million. And the answer was that it was sort of amortized across multiple years. Well, it's now closer in. There is an estimate, a more accurate estimate for it, $1.2 million, and it has now been put in toto in next year's capital plan. So I would invite the members of the committee at this point to express their opinions on this. Chief Pauly has stated in the past that this is as I understand it, a state mandate. Chief, actually, if you'd like to respond to that, but I understand it is a legal requirement for them to put a suppressor system in. Is that true?
The fire suppression system, the sprinkler system is required by state building code. Again, it should have been done in the early 90s when the building went through its addition and renovation. For political reasons, it did not happen, but currently the building is out of building and fire safety code. And this is a big bullet, and I totally get it. I totally understand, but I would be remiss and certainly would be derelict in my duties if I did not advise that this is required.
And can I ask, what would be the implication of not putting the system in? Would the school get shut down?
I'm not in a position to shut down the school. At this point, that's not at all what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is put the protection in place to protect the building and the occupants. However, should there something occur there in terms of a fire and the building is not in compliance, then there are questions. I'm not an attorney, but there are questions in terms of now the town is aware that the building is not in compliant with the codes, and how does that liability factor in? This is very uncomfortable for me. It's very uncomfortable for a lot of us, but this is the legal and moral thing that we have to tackle and get it done, as expensive as it is. I truly wish we weren't dealing with this, but again, if things were different in the early 90s, it would have been done the way it should have been done, but it wasn't. And I'll leave it at that.
I move that we accept the 1.2 million on the capital improvement plan for FY 2022 for the elementary school.
And that,
Second.
Well, before we do a roll on that, are we,
There's a motion on the floor. I made the motion, it was approved, seconded, so please move the motion.
well, no, there could be discussion on the motion.
well, Stephen,
Okay.
here's the question. Are you moving to accept the Wellfleet Elementary School's capital improvement plan as presented, or just that line item?
That line item, $1.2 million. I mean, I find it incredulous that there's no sprinkler system there now. So it's obvious that we should get this done as soon as possible.
So the open question here is, if we go ahead and vote on the sprinkler system, which we can do, we'll take a separate vote on the rest of the capital improvement plan?
You can do that, sure.
All right, I'm fine with that because this is such a large item. I think it would be good to go on record as having.
Right, and move as fast as possible.
So we have, if there's any more discussion, otherwise I'll be happy to take a vote. I would vote aye. Woody?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephen, I'm assuming you're yes.
Yes. No, sorry, yes.
I don't have any single friends.
Jen?
Aye.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Aye.
All right, so we are unanimous in voting to recommend that the sprinkler system be implemented. Now, I guess the next step is to look at the rest of Wellfleet Elementary School's capital plan as presented. That's exterior cladding, which is shingles and trim, which is the big item in 2023, 600,000. The playground has now been pushed out to 2024. And the biggest item left is replacing the roof on the original building in 2026. Is there a motion to accept the rest of the elementary schools?
Just a question, are the shingles fire retardant?
I'm gonna guess yes, but Chief Pauly, do you have an opinion on that?
He just stepped away. Give him 1 second.
I apologize. I stepped away.
There's a question. Did you hear the question?
I did. They're asphalt shingles, so they are, subject to melting. They don't burn readily. But I would assume being asphalt shingles that they will, they certainly meet the requirements of the state building code.
Okay, thank you. So having said that, I would entertain a motion to approve the Wellfleet Elementary School's capital plan as presented.
I'll move.
Second? Okay, I vote aye. Woody?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yeah,
Jeff? Where's Jen?
I see.
Aye. It's Jen.
Linda?
Aye.
And Jeff, did I get you?
Oh, aye.
All right, so that looks like it's another unanimous vote.
Aye.
All right. The last thing on the list, and this was, I think, a question that we had at the end of our last meeting, was in the section on admin, $100,000 for a GIS system. And I believe Mike Travato said he would look into it and get us a more complete description. Mike, are you still on the line?
Yeah, I am, Mr. Chair. This item is still kind of a work in progress, as best I can classify it. We actually recently had a demo of a product for us to review on the permit tracking system. And we're still in discussion relative to how that correlates to a GIS system. So I don't have any further update on this other than to say that we're still working diligently on this and don't have specific ask at this time. That would be clearer than what the placeholder is. So would maybe ask that you, I would defer to Maria on this, but maybe we want to ask if you could defer or not take a vote on this right now, because it's still not fully cooked.
Yeah, I think by default, we would just reserve our recommendation on things we don't fully understand anyway. And so when it is fully cooked, we'll be happy to weigh in whether our opinion matters or not in the long run, but sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would be my preference too.
Thank you. Yes, Jeff.
I'd be really curious about what some of our neighboring towns are doing, since this is a pretty generic function, and I just seeing what others have done, and rather than reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there, Jeff. We've been doing a lot of research, and that's why it's such a moving target here, because we're getting new information almost daily, or on a regular basis, I guess, in terms of updates on where we might want to head with this. We've been talking to other municipalities about what kind of systems they have, and trying to, short stroke it in some regard, because basing a lot of our thought process on their experiences with this. The one product that we did look at, we were very impressed with, and but we haven't made any more action moving forward with it. But that sort of thing, like we're looking, researching with other towns as to what kind of experiences they've had with that particular product. And so, to answer your question, yes, we are checking with other towns with this, so we don't reinvent.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing. That concludes the capital improvement plan. If anyone has any sort of final thoughts on that aspect of this meeting, I'm happy to entertain them. Otherwise, we can move on the agenda. And I will produce the report, or finish the report, and get it to the town administrator and the select board before the end of the month. Good. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
We can move forward in the agenda. If anyone has a liaison report, please let me know. Yeah, Jeff. I think you're muted. Either that or you're doing a wonderful job of mimicking.
Town administrator probably can comment better than I, but there's a possibility of some alternative resolution to the solar that's down at the transfer station on top of the old dump, and they're looking at possibly changing it to a lease. There's a whole big question, and COVID hasn't helped in terms of getting it through land court. So the idea is to hopefully start generating some of that for the town, hopefully.
Are you asking in your capacity as a liaison to the Energy Committee here?
Yes, well, I'm sort of sharing what I learned from them.
And per that, is there a plan to turn it on at any point in time soon?
The whole thing deals with an issue that has arisen with the land that Eversource has to put, I guess, the poles on. And so there'd been a whole question about whether or not it had been properly documented. But as I understand it, there's a possible alternative. Eversource doesn't want to be liable, so it may be possible to have some type of a lease program. The main thing is that hopefully we'll start to get the revenue, or at least getting that coming into the town. Hopefully soon.
So if I understand that, then it is the Energy Committee that will be the conduit for that information, that those legal questions have been resolved, or will it be town council?
I think it's the select board that's working on it.
No, it's town council.
Town council.
It's town council. We're right now, it's, moving forward, we've been asked to show cause. We're just waiting for the judge's opinion back, which I anticipate in the next few weeks, which may be much faster than any ground lease or anything of that nature. The judge's case that things were written in the margins and not in the body of the document is pretty frivolous. And I anticipate that we'll have an outcome in our favor. I certainly would be surprised if we didn't.
Thank you.
That's been submitted to the judge in response to his inquiry a couple weeks ago. So I don't think we're too far off, because they're not necessarily requiring everybody to come to a courtroom. Everything's via email almost. So I expect that we're going to get an answer back pretty soon.
Thank you, Marie. Jeff, is that good enough?
Yeah, it's, it'd just be great to finally get that turned on.
of course.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Anyone have a liaison report that they want to share? Okay, we have no transfers, we have no correspondence. Under the area of new business, I would like to invite Miriam Spencer to share. Miriam, if you're still online, it looks like you are, to share the latest news about getting the tax bills together, and/or Maria, because there's been some stuff going around the last couple of days about where we stand with the cash flow question, and it looks like mostly good news. So Miriam, if you could.
Chairman, I think that Miriam's in the best position to answer those questions, and want to thank her in advance for being on this meeting. I
Yeah,
didn't get back to her to tell her for sure whether she was on the agenda, so take it away, Miriam.
Miriam, I can screen share your, the thing you sent so that everybody can look at it if you talk about it, if that'll help you.
Sure, that'd be great. Yes, please.
hi Miriam,
Hi there.
thanks for attending.
Sure. Of course. So, as far as I'm concerned, things are looking up. I got a great holiday present today in just to shortcut through my memo, which you have in front of you, or on the screen, I should say. The present was that the Nauset Regional School District assessment that I will be paying on December 1st went down by $300,000. So that makes me do the happy dance a little bit. So, but in addition to that, we've already received over $100,000 in prepaid taxes. And I guess the best piece is that the tax bills are ready to be mailed on Tuesday, so November 24th. So that makes them due on December 24th, which isn't a great Christmas present for folks, but it is what it is. And I think the revenue, people have been champing at the bit, believe it or not, to pay their taxes. So we do nothing but answer phone calls as to when the tax bills are going out. And now finally we have a date, and it's close. So we're thrilled. Maria asked me to update the numbers and give, as far as the cash accounts go, and draw a comparison between this time last year. And the closest I could come was, as you can see in the dates, I showed both October and November. And of course, I could show the end date of November 19, but not there yet for 20. So there is a stark difference between, let's say, like November in each year. But keep in mind that last year, the tax bills went out at least, 3 weeks earlier. So we had already received a significant portion of tax bill payments by the end of November last year. So that's where that difference lies. Let's see, what else?
The big number that jumps out is the difference in the general fund and the online tax collections.
Yeah, that is striking, but that's the reason, really. I mean, it's the difference is the timing. But the tax bills, like I said, are going out next week, and we'll catch up. And I sleep better at night now, so that's good.
Good. I think we had that conversation 2 months ago about sleeping well at night through the holidays.
Yeah, it's quite a change. The other thing that helps me sleep better is that we've, in addition to Rich Bienvenu, who's been a big help in getting our tax rate set, huge help. We now have recruited Lisa Souvet, who worked in Brewster and is now helping us in the accounting department in getting our accounts straightened out and will help us in closing FY20 and moving forward through FY21. So we feel confident that she'll be able to. It'll take a while, of course. It took a while to make, and so it'll take a while to clean up the mess that's there. But she and Rich both have said that, you know, there's no malfeasance. It's just the biggest, I think the biggest issue was that there was a lot of turnover in staffing, as you know, and that collided with the implementation of a new accounting system, and the accounting department at that point, the implementation was left to Jane Tesson, who did the best she could, but was struggled with it, and there were definite issues in that regard. So it was never set up properly. Not Jane's fault, but she wasn't supported in doing that. So it never got better, and so now we're a year and a half later, more than that. I don't know where I am. We're still trying to untangle the mess that was created by a halfway implemented new accounting system.
Mhm.
So we're having to go back at a level of detail, almost transaction by transaction, to get the accounts set properly. It's not something we can't do. It's just going to take time. So that's where we are with that.
Is Lisa Suve familiar with the new system to be able to?
She
work?
is, yes. She's worked with it for several years.
Great. Anybody have any questions?
I'd say one of the interesting discoveries, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
is that the numbers that were the numbers, you know, the last day of the fiscal year before they changed over to the new system, and the first day of the fiscal year, I guess it was from 19 to 20, didn't match. So somehow or other you ended one fiscal year and you started the next fiscal year, and the numbers weren't the same. So there's a little bit of, you know, peeling back the layers of the onion to figure out how exactly that happened. So it's a lot of sort of detailed work to just go back, you know, and basically reconcile everything month by month by month till we catch up to the current day and make sure that we've got everything the way it's supposed to be.
Does anyone have any questions? I want to open the floor to the committee. If
I just have a question, Fred. With this new system, are we going to be able to get revenue forecasting figures? I think that's something that I think I brought it up before. When the town gets audited, it's been cited that that was a feature of the old system, but it was never used.
By revenue forecasting, you mean month to month to know when revenues come in terms of what the pattern is for January, February, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it just gives you a ballpark figure of what's out there in terms of revenue projection for the town.
Good question, and we'd be happy to ask that. The folks from the Vadar company have been assisting us in some of the things that we've been doing the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure someone can ask them that question.
Not that I know what we do with that information, but it's something that I've seen each time the auditor thing comes out.
Well, I think one of the things that would be useful to know, and this, I think we've had this conversation in the past as it impacts Miriam's work, is once the tax rate is set and the tax bills go out, can you anticipate how quickly the taxes will come in so that you're not racing to the bottom trying to beat the run rate of what it costs to run the town, that you get the revenues in faster than you spend them, so that you get back something to like multi-millions of dollars in the general fund so that you don't lose sleep at night about, this month or next month. So forecasting would help if 80% of the revenues come in the first 3-4 months, or do they get spread out?
Right, and I do know from Karen Murphy that the bulk of the real estate taxes, as I've mentioned before, come in through escrow accounts, through the banks. And they're poised and ready once the bills appear to make those payments.
So they'll get that information well ahead of Christmas.
Yes.
Great, that's good. I know a few weeks ago, there was a question about whether this would be done before mid-December, which would then push you up against that deadline. It's great that it's being done now, that the tax rate is going to be set in late November.
Right. So the bills are going out next week.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's what much better news it is than it was just a month ago.
Right.
And the other thing I'd kind of like to throw out there is, some towns do billing on a quarterly basis, which helps to even your cash flow throughout the year. Is that something this town would benefit from doing as opposed to twice a year? I don't know the answer to that, but is it something that's more prudent to do as opposed to twice a year? Have it done quarter? I think Harwich does theirs quarterly. And trying to think of the other town that does. Dennis, maybe?
I know that on the collector assessor level, there's been some discussion about that. I think there's certainly an upside for me, but I think the Karen and Nancy are, and I don't want to speak for them, but my understanding has been that of course there's an added expense when you're doubling the amount of billing and postage and, handling. And it really, there's, of course, then there's also the labor involved in doubling, the
Collection
processing.
efforts, yeah.
Right. So I'm not sure if there's a benefit. That needs to require more analysis, I think.
Yeah, and I would guess, without knowing, that the ongoing phenomenon of this epidemic, as it applies now in 2022 or 2021 and 22, will have an impact on where our revenues come from and how badly we need to do quarterly revenue gathering as opposed to biannual. If things go back to some kind of normal next summer, then in theory, the town goes back to some kind of normal. If it doesn't, then we might be looking for creative ways to gin up the revenue.
I mean, I think there's, that sort of leads into the discussion of what the impact of COVID-19 is or will be. We had a crystal ball, we could figure all that. But we'll have a better sense of if folks are having difficulty paying their property taxes, whether it's going to affect that revenue. Our
Right.
collection rate and the work done by the town's collection staff, you have a really high percentage of people paying their taxes compared to other places that I've worked. So on that level, it's sort of wait and see whether people's changes in income and or employment affect their ability to pay their taxes. In terms of some of the other sources of revenue, like the short-term rentals or those things, those are up because of the change in the way that system is done. You're also going to see some revenue, albeit I can't predict how much, from the pot shops when they open, because you get a percentage of those funds when they come in.
Yeah, but who will remember how much it was?
3%. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 3%. And then I think if you're looking on the expense side, as time goes on, God willing, this thing goes away. but
Yeah.
it's also making us look more carefully about how we do business, and it really begs for us to look at what we're doing now that we didn't do before that we might want to keep doing. And you know how the world turns. Right now I don't know that I would be buying a lot of new buildings. The way we use buildings may change. It may change if depending on how long this thing lasts. It may change. How we interact with the public, and we've got our foot in the door to do some things with the public, online that we haven't done before, that we may want to continue doing because it's easier for them, and it's easier for us. How we spend money on materials and or services for libraries. That's changing daily.
And schools.
And school, absolutely, and school. So it's everybody, every town manager in America's best guess right now. It really is. Nobody knows the answer because we're still we're dialing back to where we were in April right now in terms of our response to things. We've learned some things, because we have a little bit of time and experience under our belts. Like closing the parking lots of the beach to people, close them off to revenue, and had really no great impact on anybody being healthier due to COVID. I don't recommend you do that again. We spend lots and lots of monies on porta johns because the state, encouraged us to, but then we didn't get reimbursed for that. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, probably we won't. But if you can disinfect a bathroom, you can disinfect a porta john. So there's some things that we've learned along the way that we have to pay close attention to, what operations are actually working better because we're doing things a different way, which things just in the end turned out to be, and I love the term abundance of caution, turned out to be an abundance of caution that didn't actually improve anything. Which things were sort of pie in the sky, things that we had all the best of intentions, but we're never going to be reimbursed for expense wise, how things are going to change so we can make things more efficient for the public and or staff. So, we're all learning this together, both you and I, and every town across the country right now to figure out what new normal looks like.
Yeah. And with that, I have no other business tonight.
Thank you, Miriam.
Move to
Sure thing.
adjourn.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank
Sure
you, Marie.
thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.
Good night,
No.
Mary Ellen.
Good
So, so yay. As far as I'm concerned, we are done for tonight. Thank you so much, everybody on the committee. Thanks for helping to do our warrant responsibility and get this done once again.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Have a great.
Thank you.
Happy
Great job,
Thanksgiving,
Fred.
everyone.
Great job,
Thanks,
Fred.
David.
Thank you.
Bye.